Welcome to Christ Life Today, where we explore the glorious realities of life in Jesus Christ. So, who was involved in the Jerusalem Council? Many legalists want us to believe that the group in Acts chapter 15, verse 1 is the same group of people in Acts chapter 15, verse 5. But let's take a look and see if that is the case. We'll start here at the end of Acts chapter 14, and we see that Paul and Barnabas, were in Antioch, and that they spent a great deal of time there with the disciples, and they were teaching them the things of God. So they were in Antioch, that's where they were. And then right on to Acts chapter 15, let's look at verse 1, which I've called legalistic group 1. And certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren, and said, Except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, you cannot be saved. All right, so legalistic group 1, verse 1 of Acts 15 says certain men. Notice it does not say that these certain men were believers. And we will look at that a little more when we look at verse 5. These men came down from Judea. They were not from Antioch. They were not locals. They were not there learning from Paul and Barnabas. They came down from Judea and were preaching legalism. And what they preached, notice they didn't come from Jerusalem. They came from Judea someplace. And what did they preach? They preached that circumcision was mandatory for salvation. Notice that this group of people just said circumcision. They did not say anything about the law of Moses. All right, so in verse 2, we see that there was a big dispute between Paul and Barnabas and these legalists from Judea. And so there was a big dispute. And so the question now is, who was sent to Jerusalem? We see in verse 2, after the comma there, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of them should go to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question. So Paul, Barnabas, and some other people were sent to Jerusalem to get this question addressed. Notice it did not say that the troublemakers from Judea were sent to Jerusalem. These were not locals. They were people who came down from Judea preaching legalism. So they were not sent back to get the question answered. They were troublemakers stirring up the pot. So now on to Jerusalem they go. Paul, Barnabas, and the others go to Jerusalem. Verse 4, and when they were come to Jerusalem, they were received of the church and of the apostles and elders, and they declared all things that God had done with them. Now verse 5, what I titled Legalistic Group 2. But there arose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. This is a different group of people. Verse 5 tells us that these were believing Pharisees. The first group came down from Judea. They were certain men. It didn't say certain believers. They were certain men. Verse 5, they're believing Pharisees. Now, these believing Pharisees needed correction, and they were going to get it from the Jerusalem Council. These Pharisees were already in Jerusalem. They were in the group that welcomed Paul and Barnabas and the others. They were in the group that met them. They were part of the church. There arose up a certain of the sect of the Pharisees, that which believed. So they were already in Jerusalem. They did not come to Jerusalem with Paul and the others. And this sect of believing Pharisees said it was necessary to circumcise Gentile converts and to command them to keep the law of Moses. Notice that they said nothing about mandating circumcision or keeping the law for salvation. They just said Gentile converts needed to do this. So, bottom line is, don't let any legalists confuse you to think that the people in group 1 are the same people as those in the people in verse 1 are the same people as those in verse 5. They are not. They are two different groups of people preaching different messages and from different places. So read the Bible for yourself and believe exactly what the Bible says. Never listen to heretics giving you their opinions of what they think the Bible says.